Well, that duel with Camille was a disaster for Don Quixote. But what about after that? Well, let's move on to that part, shall we? Sometime after that duel, Rodia was nervously asking if anyone wants to take a quick stroll around the empty lot while they wait. As she was about to leave, Virgilius, the Red Gaze, stopped her, wanting her to stay as he had something to share. Heathcliff, thinking that this was about Don Quixote's duel, asked if it could wait until the mission was over, as nothing came of it in the end. This wasn't what he was talking about. Virgilius had some exclusive information that the company wanted to share with them. That was the only reason. Don Quixote looked as if she was about to urinate herself, remembering the beatdown that she received in District 11 for repeated reckless actions that hindered their missions. She was terrified while trying to explain this. He told her that it won't be held against her on this occasion, telling her to be, and the others to be quiet and pay attention. Don Quixote was swearing undying loyalty to him. Ironic considering what she is. Virgilius ignored this and pulled out a small tablet and began loading something up on the screen. Virgilius regretted that the one who was about to brief them on this exclusive intelligence couldn't be there in person due to personal reasons. She wanted him to tell them that she regrets having to deliver that information via that device. A voice was trying to get through as the transmission was unclear. Ishmael was worried that this might get them into trouble, as Han-Ul banned any unauthorized recordings or video feeds. Virgilius told her that they've received prior permission, likely because this was relevant to their mission, and P-Corp was already recording the conversations of every participant in that mission. Gregor understood this to mean that they're bugged. So they don't feel safe unless they can't even themselves without them hearing about it. Virgilius told them that even this wasn't free. The company had to convince them that the information would be needed to capture what was the origin of Manchaland. Then a transmission came through and we see Moses, the distortion detective, or the LCD on-site investigative reasoning team leader, telling them that she's been studying and investigating the distortion phenomenon for a long time, and this reminded Dante of the call with the bubbly personality that was part of the same team, and her name was Ezra, who appeared behind Moses to greet them. She understood that they were hunting blood fiends this time, asking if they were going to go in without asking their team leader. She's busted plenty of blood fiends in the past. Yeah, certainly within Hotel Darriere, which was in progress when the distortion detective story was discontinued, because they wanted to make a game out of it. As for how Moses dealt with them, apparently she used her EGO to fight them. Well, distortions in general, which was in the form of her pipe that she uses to indulge in her nicotine addiction. Moses cut off Ezra's excited description of that time, confirming that she has experience with investigating and battling blood fiends. She even met one of the blood fiend elders, or first kindreds. So Lario was a first kindred, one that outranked Don Quixote. This surprised Sinclair, speaking of them fighting a sixth and 7th kindred. Moses didn't have time to talk about that day. Well, Project Moon hasn't written that part of the story yet. So she'll get straight to the point. The mention of First Kindred caught Don Quixote's attention, asking if she slayed the First Kindred. Moses told her that, of course she didn't. Ezra told them that she went easy on them. Clearly she knew better than to attack one that she was working for at that time, especially with something that would give a colour fixer a run for their money. A grade 5 like her would stand no chance, even when backed up by Ezra, a grade 7. Even the other one that was with her, Vespa Crabro, a grade 1. Moses cleared this up by saying that she took mercy on her. The meeting wasn't as bloody as the scene that they might be imagining. She gave her a place to sit and time to talk about this. Heathcliff found it hard to believe that a blood fiend was the diplomatic type and was civil with her. Ezra took offence to him being rude to the team leader like that. Moses understood that public perception of blood fiends is far from amicable. She knows that at least some of them, including that elder, wished for peaceful coexistence with humans. Well, she certainly had a sustainable business plan, where she had a non-lethal amount of blood taken from her guests that paid to stay in her hotel. In fact, the only fixers that might want them dead are those that specialise in blood fiend hunting. In the past, she used to believe with complete certainty that they weren't special, that they were no different from the distortions faced previously. The wells of blood splashing inside their pupils was evidence of this to her. But when this was shared with the elder, she was evasive, not confirming or denying this. She corrected herself after this. They can't be explained only through the simple lens of viewing them as distortions. They might be similar to distortions, but they are not in the same category. They attempted to resolve them, but failed. They're still looking into the true origin. Well, I'm suspecting Nosferatu, a more natural abnormality that predated the Lobotomy Corporation. Well, blood fiends certainly predated the White Nights and Dark Days by more than 2 centuries. Well, it's a suspicion, at least. Urtis understood that if her team was looking into blood fiends, they're likely to have information that's not public. She does. Dante noticed that Moses was staring intently, but briefly at Urtis before continuing, suspecting that they might know each other from somewhere. That's likely to be during the Smoke War, as at that time, Moses was part of the Udjats, Lady Dia's personal army. Urtis fought in that same war, if her Zayn Egeo image was anything to go by. Yes, they've likely encountered each other at some points. But that'll wait until Urtis' story is covered. Moses then got to the point as Ezra held up a crudely drawn diagram which showed what they learned about the kindreds of true blood fiends. Those that they already encountered, not counting those that manifested as distortions after the White Nights and Dark Days. Moses spoke of the primogenitor, the first blood fiend that wielded unimaginable power and could embrace countless humans and turn them into blood fiends. But from the first kindred onwards, they could only create 2 blood fiends. Ezra spoke of how they can't just create families. not as readily as the primogenitor, anyway. Gregor spoke of how disappointed Cassetti was about choosing Sasha as his kindred. Faust found this difficult to correct. Moses continued by saying that when a blood fiend of a higher generation creates a lower generation kindred, the one that embraced them is a higher kindred. The embraced is a lower kindred, where the older the generation, the more powerful they were. Massault observed that while this was often the case, as Moses put it, there are cases where it wasn't. Ezra confirmed this, as blood fiends are as different in a number of ways as distortions. Dante was silent at this. She let Moses explain. She explained how each blood fiend's powers and idiosyncrasies, English failing, often vary depending on the higher blood fiend's abilities. However, it's seen as impossible for a lower blood fiend to revolt against a higher blood fiend. It's an intense psychological barrier, rather than a physical barrier, preventing this. Gregor understood this to be like a parent and their child. Moses agreed with this comparison, which included familiar terms. They call acts of revolts like that as filial impiety, yes. Yes, need to get the pronunciation right. Much as how blood is their axis of judgment, so does the inviolable relationship between family members, imprinted into the core of their very being, upon being turned. And upon being turned, they also have an extreme level of twist in their moral judgments. Well, they'll fit in perfectly in the city. In fact, they probably do, as morality is grey at best in that. Sinclair understood that's why the blood bags are at the bottom of the pile. Moses saw them as far from family as they can be. Blood bags, or dregs, failed to become blood fiends, seen as portable bags of blood to replenish themselves when needed. Then Ezra reminded Moses, who called her detective before correcting herself by saying team leader, reminded her that she snapped their necks and smashed them into the water. Moses spoke of their irrational fear of water. While it doesn't harm them, as in burn them like acid, as it did in the Legacy of Kain series, all that she's seen so far, fear it. So, similar to how Martian Manhunter fears fire to the point where it's incapacitating. Although in the case of Martian Manhunter, fire damages when in contact. Water, on the other hand, with the blood fiends, doesn't. Rodia asked if spraying them with water can keep them off their backs. Moses didn't see this as a solution, as water wouldn't be widely available, if at all, where they were going. She also knew that one of them can sense distortions, learned through unofficial channels. Dante was unsure what to say. Moses was glad to know that someone else understands this. She'd like to meet them one day. Ezra considered that it was a shame that she couldn't see that for themselves, asking if any famous fixers were there. Hearing that Camille was there, wanting them to kick his for them. She tried to pull a prank on him, but she was banned from his chat. What a petty he was. Well, considering that those that encountered the damned dozen were usually about as doomed as a red-shirted ensign on an away mission, with the senior officers in Star Trek on a uncharted planet, the odds aren't great, aren't they? Rodia mentioned that he already kicked one of their. Then Ezra told Vesper to hold the line. Yisang observed that they're in the middle of quite an activity themselves. Virgilius told Moses that they can end the call there. She understood. Rodia asked if she had any last words of advice. Moses thought about this, then she remembered that some older generations of Bloodfiends can overcome their fear of water. Then she checked if anything was left out. She then told them not to underestimate their bloodlust, because no matter how hungry for blood that they think that they are, they will be worse. Rodia asked what that was supposed to mean. While they wanted to know what that meant, the call dropped, so... Well, from what we can tell, Vesper Crabro, that's Grade 1 Fixer and former Taboo Hunter of Encore, is still around. Well, that's one more with plot armor for the future Distortion Detective game. Yes. For those unfamiliar, Vesper Crabro was sent by Encore to hunt down Moses, Ezra, and Yuria. Yuria being a workshop operator that specialized in augmenting EGO with items, who can summon killer teddy bears with her own EGO that manifested. She's currently unaccounted for. As for Vesper Crabro, he was hunting them down for recording video footage within District 14, which violated a taboo there. Yes. Lapis committed a similar violation, which Virgilius in his office was, considered accessories for that, and was slaughtered. Where after a number of battles, including hiring a combat-orientated fixer office, along with him being trapped inside the atelier of Yuria, with only Moses' severed arm that he cut off during that sustained conflict to sustain his own body for a month. Clearly there was water there, and after being released in District 11, which was outside of his jurisdiction, he was fired from Encore and was forced to be with Moses' group via Lady Diaz, for the possibility of being reinstated. Thankfully, Virgilius wasn't in camera shot, as, for all we know, Ezra might fangirl on him, almost as much as Don Quixote did. This is assuming that she didn't know that he was there already. They gathered themselves sometime after that, and waited for La Manchaland to manifest. Meanwhile, Dante had something to ask Virgilius before they left. Unfortunately, Then they asked where Faust was. Honglu hadn't seen her for a while, asking if he could help Dante. This was a problem, as Dante wanted Faust to translate for them to Virgilius, but they weren't sure where she was. Honglu was around, and they could ask for his help. Virgilius informed Dante that it was 30 minutes until La Manchaland manifested. There was many questions that Dante wanted to ask, but whenever they stood in front of them, rather he stood in front of them, they struggled to think. Well, considering what he's capable of, that's hardly surprising. It reminded them not to him off, unless they're sure they can get away with it. Dante asked why didn't he stop Don Quixote earlier, when Camille challenged her to a duel. Virgilius, of course, didn't know what they were talking about. Dante was unsure of what to do. Then Honglu understood that they needed a translator and relayed the message to Virgilius. Which explained to the red gaze why there was a look of reproach. It was because the Sunk Association chooses duels as a means of resolving conflicts. But after the conflict in question has been resolved, as far as they're concerned, that's the end of it. It's dealt with. Seeing this as a lasting memory of ancient chivalric virtues. Dante understood that if this was tried with any other association or office, it would have caused problems. The Sunk Association, on the other hand, was much safer. To a point. Virgilius saw that his intervention would have caused more problems than it would solve. Well, it wasn't his fight. She started it, she should finish it. Then he paused and said that it's about time she woke up. Honglu didn't fully understand this, especially as she's the most lucid of them. Dante was unsure of what Virgilius meant. Honglu pointed to his eye and told them that her eyes were always twinkling like two bright stars, seeing them as fascinating. Dante noticed that the light in Honglu's left eye was growing dimmer, like the light was fading away. Virgilius was patiently waiting for more questions from Dante, which they asked, although this one was regarding what happened on the warp train, and it was a sensitive one, as Honglu didn't yet need to know what Don Quixote truly was. Honglu saw how flustered they were. Dante was choosing their words carefully. Despite Virgilius telling them not to be so nervous, as he knows what happened on the warp train. Dante, understanding that Faustus kept him updated, and then asked what was going on with Don Quixote there. Honglu translated this, not knowing the full context. Dante told them, or rather Dante was told by Virgilius, that they were perfectly capable of finding their own answers, as they had more pressing questions to ask, such as what will happen to Don Quixote. Dante understood that Don Quixote's group therapy session was next. Virgilius was not going to answer the question, as he'll get that answer anyway, as long as they keep riding the flow to whoever it took them. Virgilius didn't need the translation to know that Dante understood, telling them that should they ever find themselves growing anxious in Manchaland, where things go to hell more than usual, remember these words. Henceforth, whatever happens, Don Quixote will remember the promise. And Dante had no idea what that meant, but the meaning was there. Dante just hadn't figured that out yet. Sometime after that, in the empty lot, Dante asked Don Quixote what happened earlier. Surprisingly, she thought it was a marvellous day. And Dante, quite concerned, wasn't sure what she meant. Don Quixote had the joy of seeing a Hana Association fixer. She also dueled with Camille of the Sunk Association, seeing him as righteous and becoming in his live streams. Seeing their fight as an issue of miscommunication. Yep, she's lost nothing. Dante asked how she could access his streams on the bus. Well, it likely has a good internet connection. Well, it makes sense, as now, certainly where I'm from, there's Wi-Fi on trains. Well, it's not that good where I am, but it still works. Don Quixote was finally beginning to feel as though they're dealing with contracts worthy of true fixers, to slay the wicked and liberate the innocent from suffering. Virgilius might insist that they seek out and retrieve the golden bar. She'll destroy the blood fiends, even if it results in the failure of the primary objective. She vows to rescue all the victims as well. Yeah, Dante stared in silence at these boasts. The twinkling in her eyes was clear as Honglu said. Then Charon referred to them as TikTok. Faust returned. Dante was looking for her. It wasn't hard for her to figure out that it's because they had business with Virgilius. Dante felt that she was accusing them of not having any other reason to look for her, while also noticing that she's not alone with Charon often, asking what the two of them were doing there. Faust was, she was doing some routine procedures with her, a regular examination. Possibly due to complications caused by her changing from Lapis to Charon. Dante asked what this was. Faust explained it's something to do with grey matter biofusion, normally trend test and response activity level tests to electrical stimuli, along with tests of external brain pressure variance test, bloodstream distribution test to verify... in simple terms, a medical examination. Dante didn't understand any of what Faust said, so she stopped there. Reminding Dante that Faust wasn't good at talking with people either. Charon heard that the others were going to an amusement park, asking if it's more fun than the bus. Dante thought so, even though they'd never been to one. Faust described it as where people did activities that increased the heart rate by 1.5 times the typical range. Charon asked why. Faust told her that they board vehicles that are meant to do that and increase their excitement. The rides consist of binding the passenger to the chair and dropping the vehicle, which often takes the form of a train, from 100 meters in height to ground level within 3 seconds. Charon saw this as reckless driving, seeing the driver as worse than herself. Faust saw this as possible. Dante saw that Charon was in no position to lecture anyone about reckless driving, considering that she was a dangerous driver herself, as she drove through multiple backstreet residents that tried to get into the bus around Chapter 1. Dante asked if there was other more fun rides. Faust believed so. Charon could drive the bumper cars. They'd actually be an improvement for her. Dante told her that they should go to a real one someday, if it's allowed for, as in one that isn't full of literally bloodthirsty monsters that want to drain them dry. They told her to make a list of what she wanted to do when she got there, and Faust translated this, and Charon wanted to know when and where. Faust replied that it's for the day that they can travel to locations other than the bus itself. What she would want to do at an amusement park. Charon thought about this and wanted to eat a candy there. Even she had a twinkle in her eye that day. Like the sour or bitter candy as, well, if that much hasn't changed when she changed from Lapis to Charon. Anyway, from that point onwards, Don Quixote will have the How Righteous status, which gives 1 haste, 3 offense up and 3 defense down next turn, and 2 additional offense up. It will appear after 3 cumulative turns after that, to a maximum of 6. And she'll heal 3 SP on a clash win, and she'll have a clash power up of 1 if she kills during a turn. Sometime after that, fixers they were gathering at the site. Alessio could see that Manchaland was manifesting. From the moment that the music plays, which is 16-12 hours that day, Manchaland will be open until 22-12 hours. As he said that, a sphere was hovering above the empty lots, which bloomed like a flower, and then revealed Manchaland. Then Dante had a memory of Don Quixote where Virgilius said, "Even when you feel like giving up on yourself, I promise." Then another voice asked, "Is that it? How will you live on?" Then Don Quixote said, "Thank you for everything. Don't forget those Fixer magazines." Then she screamed, "Please, please, I don't want an adventure. Stop, please." Then a different voice had conceived of an idea most ingenious. This happened before to Dante at the Great Lake with Ishmael's memories, but these memories of Don Quixote were more fragmented, opaque. What little was found from that was nothing like the Don Quixote that they knew, questioning if they should follow this to the conclusion. Then they remembered Virgilius asking, "What shall happen with Don Quixote?" They'll understand this eventually. Why should that mission be any different? They move forward, towards Manchaland. The anxiety of Sinclair was clear as he got closer to it. Riishu smelled blood. Well, that amusement park is made of blood. What do you expect? Paula warned against lowering their guard in front of what had devoured dozens of fixers. The Blood Fiend Hunter saw the Blood Fiends approach, but other fixers saw survivors coming out. Camille was disappointed that he couldn't record this, as he'd break his viewer record. Paula understood that they're not civilians, telling everyone to ready their weapons. Utis warned Dante about their outfits, seeing them as anachronistically antique costumes. Quite the novelty. Massault confirmed this. Several of them can't be worn without assistance. Ishmael understood this to mean that they've had a wardrobe change forced on them. As they were all discussing this, Alessio shouted from behind the line to stop, to not approach Manchaland yet. The first 10 minutes post-manifestation is when the wastes are expelled, telling them to stand behind the line for safety. One fixer asked what office that fixer was from, seeing one that's different. Another asking if they're association fixers. Then one that looks like Pyro from TF2 on steroids, if gender bent, recognized a few of them. This one recognized that they were from the Firefist office, their office. Yeah. I suspect that flamethrowers are less likely to be subject to the ethics law that restricts firearms, while kinetic projectile firearms can be made less painful. And even then, the head restricts the manufacturing and use of firearms via licenses, heavy taxation, and regulating what can be made. Flamethrowers are made to make the enemy do the fire dance, although they still need to watch out, as if the residential district is burned, the taboo hunters would likely hunt them down. As for the Firefist office fixers, they were identified by the boss ladies. Even if they fail the eradication contract, they'll have the contribution reward. if they can make a 15-minute testimony to, well, what was in there. Alessio repeated the warning to hold until the 10 minutes, until they're finished expelling, but the fixer ignores this warning and rushed out to greet the survivor. But the survivor was incoherent. Alessio understood what this meant. The Firefist office fixer was relieved that they might finally move out of that mouldy semi-basement office and find a place with sunlight. Telling their co-worker that they'll not scoff at them and even do some interviews, get paid and make a name for themselves. The Blood Fiend Hunter wasn't fooled. Neither was Romero. The Firefist office was then telling her comrade to hold on a little longer. You said, La Manchaland, bloom your smiles of joy. La Manchaland, that's all. Dream free here. We hope you stay away from here. Then that Firefist fixer was attacked and devoured by what she thought was one of her office. Romero understood them to be blood bags. Literally turned moments before they escaped. The other Blood Fiend Hunter understood this to be one bitten by a small fry based on the speed that they turned. The older the generation, the faster the transformation occurs. Some of the more powerful ones can make it happen at will or time delay it. Roger asked them for advice on how to deal with them. Romero had one. If they didn't have what it takes, it's best to die, as he sees being turned into a blood bag as no different from death. That wasn't very assuring to Sinclair. Hong Lu had no problems with that, as he was going to do that anyway. Apparently death is better than being... Well, actually yes, death is better than being a blood bag, because at least you die and get it over with. Being a blood bag is worse than death, as you're a slave to the will of the blood fiends. Or the short version of that is, better dead than dregs. Then the blood bag crew came for them. Yes, many blood bags attacked them. The damned dozen were familiar with how they fought, after fighting these within the warp train in the previous mission. So that was nothing they couldn't handle. After that battle, a recorded message was, broadcasted on the PA, which more or less said, La Manchaland, bloom your smile. La Manchaland, a place of freedom to dream side by side with blood fiends. We wish you a wonderful stay here. Admissions end in 5 minutes. Please form a line and enter in an orderly fashion. Remember, enter through the back left and exit through the back left. Entry may be difficult once the admissions are over, so please wait by the gates with your blood packs. After that, Han-Ul told them that she hoped to see some of them again in a few hours. The cool tone contrasted with the announcement's cheery voice. Sorry. Gregor understood that she likes making things ominous. Virgilius only gave a light nod. Strangely, this aloof attitude was quite a relief to Dante. The last thing they saw before the gate was shut behind them was the awed look on the eyes of every P-Corp employee, all intensely fixed on the gates of La Manchaland as it closed, as if they didn't want to miss even a glimpse of it. Well, at least Han-Ul was honest, as she simply didn't give a about those that she's sending to their deaths. Yeah, functional psychopath, isn't she? Dante remembered that the fixers were assigned specific areas. Romero noted that they were going their separate ways, hoping that they both survive the next time they meet. The Blood Fiend Hunters were assigned to Area 3, Jia Zichun to Area 2, and Limbus company was assigned to Area 1, along with that overdramatic fixer that introduced himself as Hugo. Dante noted that he was relieved to be in the same area as them. He showed them a map of La Manchaland, believing that made him the ace of the team. Yes, the ace of the team, and Ishmael saw it as an amusement park brochure with a map on it. Hugo was worried that the Fang Hunt office would have been assigned with him. Specifically, what they would do to him if he was with them, seeing them as brutish, that they might have killed him as soon as the gate closed, or worse. They might have left his name out of the eradication fee receipts, seeing that as awful, struggling to remember exactly what their group was called. Dante understood that they were part of one of the numerous no-name fixer officers, but didn't feel the need to correct him. Hugo saw it as sucking to be a small time left out on the good stuff, not like the sunk or thrive fixers that get top billing. Yes, they certainly get the top billing, and Don Quixote didn't see that as true. Fixers with great valor and righteousness deserve respect. She's long dreamt of being one herself. A fixer fixes things such as injustices of downtrodden fortunes of the unjust. Once they survive that encounter with that wicked place, all shall rethink their impressions of them. Roger was concerned that Don Quixote will be looked on as insane, and looked at her to try and make her stop. More than she usually does. Don Quixote asked why she's giving her a terrifying look. Roger told her that she shouldn't say things like, "Once we'll survive this." Then she stopped herself, seeing this as pointless. Then Sinclair understood what happened to the survivors. Dante told them to go to the Area 1 device, or specifically Area 1, to activate the device there. Yisang viewed the brochure and the kind of rides there. Area 1 was called the Pretty Wonderful Place. Rides and attractions include Fixer for a Day and Fashionista Show. Gregor saw this as typical amusement park. It even has themes. Then Yisang asked, what was the point of this place? Heathcliff didn't know and didn't care to know. It wasn't their concern. Yisang wanted to know as time has buried the place of joy that the Manchaland once claimed to be. Unforced honest laughter. Then someone laughed, but it was the psychotic kind of laughter, and she was clearly a blood fiend and was delighted at the start of the eradication party. Excited at seeing more humans, more excitement. She wanted this party to be held more often, 3 times a day. So she'll send one of them back with 2 days to live, wanting to tell their boss who sent them there, so that more can visit. Urtis then entered into negotiations, telling them to tell her and the others where the device was and she'll kill her painlessly. Sadly, this threat only encouraged the Blood Fiend, seeing her words as nasty, but with tasty blood, telling them not to be so hasty. They have events to cover, fashion shows, popularity contests, believing this to be exciting. Don Quixote asked if this was how they made fun of their guests and fixers. The Blood Fiend ignored her and remembered the most important thing. They're looking unfashionable, insulting their uniforms, seeing them as looking like they were stitched together from rat hides. She'll be in trouble if she doesn't fix that. Rodier was offended by this, saying that she doesn't look half bad. But clearly the Blood Fiend saw her as all bad, as she offered to dress them in pretty dresses and suits, all to put them on display in the powder room and nibble them slowly for a week, asking herself Who should you taste first? You're welcome to try and put Otis in a dress. She's not into that. Dante asked them if they could handle all the blood fiends coming to them. Yisang said that wouldn't be a problem, as unlike the warp train, time wasn't suspended in the Manchaland, so they will die. Otis saw this as inferior to Cassetti. They're as strong as Sasha, if not weaker, so either a 7th or 8th kindred, if not lower. Heathcliff understood this to mean, "Good! Time to smash their skulls in!" The damned dozen then proceeded to kill the blood fiends in their way, along with their blood bags, with Hugo hiding somewhere and letting the others make him a lesser target. That was a warm welcome, wasn't it? Until next time. Hail the rabbit!